Alright, this is a quick video on what's the difference between volts, amps, amp hours, watt hours, watts. Like, people get this stuff confused and think it's like some crazy thing, but it's very, very, very simple. It's like stupid simple. So, what are amps? Amps is basically torque. Like, it is how fat the goddamn energy that's going through it is. You know what I mean? It's the pressure, right? Volts is basically the speed, right? So if you compare this to like a car, amps would be like the number of like torque you have, so like 100 foot-pounds, and volts would be the RPM, so how fast you're pushing that much torque through the engine. And what those two would create would be horsepower, right? RPM times like the torque number is horsepower, right? Divided by something or whatever, and it gives you the horsepower at the end of the day, right? The same thing applies for electric. Volts times amps equals watts, which is the horsepower for electric things. So, like, 72 volts times like 90 amps or whatever will give you about 6,000 watts, which is about like 8 horsepower, which is what the CYC is. So that's how you know what it is, right? It's very simple. And now a lot of people confuse this one thing, which is watt hours and amp hours. Amp hours is kind of, honestly, not gonna lie, kind of a meaningless like thing. Like, a lot of batteries are listed as, oh, this battery's 20 amp hour. Should I get a 20 amp hour battery or a 10 amp hour battery? You can't really compare those though. You know what I mean? Because it's very relative to how many volts there are. Like, a 72 volt 10 amp hour battery is the same size as a 36 volt 20 amp hour battery, because at the end of the day, what matters is watt hours. That is the actual physical capacity. If you were to run this battery at a certain watt for an hour, like how long would it last, whatever, right? So always do the calculation of watt hours. That's how big the battery actually is. So like a 72 volt battery times 20 amp hours would give you X amount of watt hours, which would be like 1400 watt hours. And then you could find out this one's bigger than that one, basically. So you have to do the multiplication. That's all it is, okay? Watt hours is the actual size of the battery. Amp hours is like, I guess, how many amps it has. I don't know. Amp hours is like kind of like meaningless, to be honest. It's only good if you use it with the volts to get the watt hours, right? From like what I understand. And so there's also another thing. It's called phase amps. These are very different from normal amps. All right, so like, okay, what phase amps is basically like a burst. Okay, that's as like easily or like simply I could explain it. Okay, phase amps is like that brunt torque. You know, like if you're standing still and you mash the throttle, what's going on is the phase amps pushing you, basically. And the phase amps is like, imagine like a supercapacitor inside the motor releasing a shit ton of energy in a split second. That's basically what the phase amps are. And it doesn't happen from the battery. Like, your battery could be rated for 60 amps, but you could still deliver like 1,000 phase amps, for example, because the phase amps come from the controller and the motor. Like, it's basically the controller like dictating how much to like send to the motor's phase or phases or phase wires or whatever. Basically, that's what it is, okay? And the amp hour is important to calculate the watt hours, but like the amp hour, I don't think it's important because it's deceptive. That's the only reason. Like, it is a real metric, whatever. Obviously, don't be retard, but it's deceptive. That's why I like watt hours more than amp hours. Okay, it's very fucking simple. And yeah, so quickly recapping everything: volts is the speed of the electricity, amps is the amount of the electricity, and phase amps is like basically the burst of the electricity, right? And watt hours is the total capacity if the battery was ran for like an hour or whatever. Like, how much could you like, how many watts would you like you could run, basically, like the actual capacity. And the amp hours is the total amps inside the battery, like the milliamp hours. So like you can like determine things from that. Usually, like, it's useful for certain aspects. Like, if you want to see like what cells it's using, you can like kind of figure that out sometimes. But like, just look at the amp hours as a multiplication like thing with the volts, okay? So like, if you have a 72 volt battery, you have to multiply it times the amps to get the size of the battery, basically, okay? It's that simple. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I'm basically a genius at this. Yeah, and use code PL5 on both Down Duro or CYC. Link in the description if you want to buy a CYC X1 or literally anything CYC, or if you want to buy like a hub motor on Down Duro. All right, bye bye.